Hi everybody, in this video we're going to look at sculpting some terrain for the ship that we're going to animate. So what we'll be doing is creating a canyon for a canyon run on our ship. So here we go. I'm going to grab a plane here and I'm just going to kind of drag from corner to corner on that grid, and I'm just going to orbit around, as you can see, just a plane. I do like to just tug it up a little bit with the move tool because the grid is just a little bit annoying for this. So just get it a little bit above the grid. Alright, so next I'm going to go over to the polyplane tab, and we need a lot of subdivisions. So right now it just has one face. We're going to make this 100 by 100. Okay, you can see it like that. I'm now going to go over here. So there are some tabs. Okay, we've been on the poly modeling tab where we see our primitive shapes here, but the sculpting tab, these are all the sculpting tools, and they really look the same as the ones that we used before when we used SculptGL. There's this one here, it's the sculpting tool. So I'll click on that one, and if I just kind of move around, now I notice that it's very rough looking. I'm just going to change that. I'm going to reset my tool just so it's brand new here. Alright, so right now my brush is really big, but if I hold B and drag, I can drag my mouse. So by holding down a left mouse button, I can move my mouse left and right to make, and while holding the B key on your keyboard, you can make your brush bigger or smaller. Okay, and if I sculpt now, you can see it's really sculpting really fast. It's just a lot of it's really pushing it up a lot. So I'm going to undo that. So how do we change the strength of the brush? Well, if you hold down M on your keyboard and hold down your left mouse button, I can move it up or down, and you can see this is the strength line or the meter here. So I'm just going to bring it down really low. So holding B is brush size, holding M and dragging your mouse is brush strength. So now you can see it just a little bit better, right? Okay, and you can kind of paint with this now. Okay, I'm going to undo that. So notice that the sculpting tool that I just picked here pushes up, but if I hold Control, it will push down. Okay, I'll show you that. See how it's pushing down. Alright, so let's take a look. I'm going to move to the top view. So if you press your space bar and come over here to the top view, I'm going to zoom out, and I just want to kind of draw what the terrain is going to look like. Now, please don't make it too swirly because it's just not going to work very well. You'll see mine. I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm just going to kind of, again, hold down Control because I want to push in, and I'm going to start here, and maybe it's going to come over there, turn, have a little turn, and then kind of do that. So almost like an S. Now that I've done that, I'm going to come back to this view here, the perspective view. And again, that terrain or that grid is in my way. I'm just going to move this up a little bit more. Alright, you can kind of see. So with the same brush, I'm going to go over this again. So if I hold down Control, just have to get the tool again. Sorry, there we go. Okay. So if I do, I think I'm not on the right tool here. There it is. Okay. So remember, holding Control, I'm just going to make this a little bit deeper. So I'm going to orbit my scene and kind of just make this a little deeper by running over it a few times. You can also hit the edge a bit, some more. Okay. Some parts can be a little bit deeper than others, possibly. You can see what I have here. Alright. So one thing you can do with this sculpting tool is you can add a type of brush that will help to add um, some details. So let's do that. Keeping on the same tool here, I'm going to double click the tool. It's right here. So if you don't see this, you just have to be selected on it. I'll double click it, and you'll see right over here there's something called stamp. If I drop down stamp, I could pick a stamp, and I'm not sure, you just have to kind of look at, see what works best, but I want one that looks rocky, so I'm gonna maybe take this one here, and I'll close this out. I'll close this out, and if I come over here, and I'm just gonna M down, I just don't want this to be too deep, so look at this, I can just add that texture. It's taking that stamp, and it's adding that texture to your, and I can just make that happen everywhere. So it's adding that texture to your sculpt. All right. Now there is a trick. You could do this with the same sculpt tool, with the same brush. I can M up really big, and I'll B up really big to make this brush bigger, and then if I paint with it this way, you can see how I can really have some pull up some terrain, some really good sculpted terrain using the stamp, but just a higher strength, and you can see how that works. So I am going to do that, and I think that looks really good. So inside here, maybe you can brush down if you want just maybe some rocks to kind of shoot off the edge a bit like that, right? Just paint just a little maybe. If you don't like it, just undo it. If you hold shift while you're on any of these sculpting tools, you can smooth out. So if you saw a spot that you didn't like, you can hold shift and just smooth it back down. Okay. Alright, so that looks good. You can see we're going to fly, we're going to dive in here with the ship, and we're going to have a turn here and get right through it. Alright. Now, let me just take a look. I could just stretch that a bit. Make it a little longer. Alright. So now, actually I don't like it because I don't like what it did to the sculpts. I thought it looked better like this. There are other things you can use, some other stamps. I'll just show you one here. If I double click it again, I'll go back to stamp and pick stamp. And there's something like this. So this is kind of a lined texture. I'll show you what that will do. I'm going to close this out and close this out. And with this lined tool, let me see how big my brush is. Is it really big? Oh, I have to click on that, and now it's okay. So here we go. I'm going to M down in that strength here, and you can see it's kind of makes lines, right? It was a lined looking stamp, so I can do that, or I'll undo, and if I hold Control and do that, maybe I'll do more of a top view here. If I hold Control, it'll dig in, right? So I'm going to just make this brush a little bigger. I'm going to dig in and just kind of create these leading lines that'll help me look in here. Alright, I like that. Good. Alright, and I can M down a little more, just maybe create some edges on the sides here. So that was an interesting tool to help us dig kind of crevices, and you can add those anywhere. And you can see what I'm making here. Okay. So this is how to sculpt your terrain. After this, we'll add a texture and potentially water. I'll show you how right now. So if I go back to the Poly Modeling tab, this is something that you might want. I can select this plane, and I'm going to drag out a large plane that's bigger than the terrain itself. And what's great about this is I can take my Move tool, and if I move it up, you can see it almost fills up the terrain with kind of like what looks like it would be water. So to make it look like some river or stream. So the higher you make that, the more it'll fill up. But we could texture this with an ocean texture later on. Maybe I want it just a little lower because I want it to kind of look like it's smaller in spots and a little deeper in others, right? More shallow and more deep. And I like that a lot. So I'm going to keep that. Alright, so stay tuned for my next one on texturing this terrain, but this would be how to sculpt it using the sculpt tools in Maya. Good luck and give it a try.